They're not great. They're not great. Guys, we'll start the program here in a matter of moments. A number of macro headlines that are not eliciting the most positive vibes in real estate. But what we've learned from Real Talk with Keith Smith, macro headlines do not apply necessarily to the Charlottesville and Central Virginia market. So we'll try to unpack the headlines that I'm sure you, the viewer and listener, are seeing, because media is legitimately a 24-hour news cycle that we cannot avoid. We'll try to unpack the news with Scott Morris of Ross Mortgage today. We'll spend time with you till about 11:30 a.m., and we'll make sure we cut a number of highlight clips with some poignant perspective from the distinguished gentleman and from Scott Mortgage Morris. Judah Wickower, we can rock and roll when you're ready. Good Wednesday morning, guys. I'm Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk with Keith Smith. Thank you kindly for joining us. A pleasure to connect with you guys through the I Love CVille network on a show presented by Ross Mortgage. If you woke up this morning, you may have seen some macro headlines that are a bit disheartening in the finance and real estate spaces, but we're here to unpack those headlines and offer clarity why the macro news cycle doesn't always apply to Charlottesville and Central Virginia. Judah Wickower, our director, let's go to studio camera and a 3-shot and welcome Scott Morris and Keith Smith to the program. And Scott, we should start right away with you. Macro headline number one, mortgage demand at a 28-year low. It's looking like a mortgage on a 30-year fixed with good credit is flirting with 7% here in the first trading day of March in 2023. The show is yours, Scott Morris.
Down 44% in purchase volume from this time last year. All of those are not great things. The good news is I think that we got an inflated jobs report 2 weeks ago, and I think next week we start to see somewhere between the 7th and the 10th, there's some data coming out that I think is going to support a more friendly bond market. So a lot of that had to do with some numbers that they pumped in, literally with numbers from last year that they pushed over into, that rolled over into the new year that really actually did not, they weren't real. The data was so late being pushed into that report that it wasn't factual. We'll see. I think that next week gives us a better look. So we've got a U.S. 10-year that's just crossed 4%. We are at the highs that have matched the highs of the last few months, which are the highest we've been in 10 years. But I don't see it. I don't think this sticks. I think I've talked about how volatile things would be, and I think we're living and breathing that right now. But I think next week brings better news. So I'm up. They see me, I'm down. That's like something that in the Marine Corps they teach you when people are shooting at you, and that's kind of what the market's doing right now. We're up. I think everybody has a heart attack. We get some data that supports a better environment, and we come back down.
Scott Morris, guys, Ross Mortgage. First sizzle reel right there. Keith Smith, a co-owner, co-founder of Yes Realty Partners, an award-winning realtor. Yeah. He's been in the game for 3 decades plus, and frankly speaking, one of the best broadcasters I know. Here is an opportunity to create a nice piece of sizzle reel content for your own. I mean, we have some headwinds with the macro news cycle. Does not always apply to Central Virginia, however.
Micro markets matter. I don't consider that news. I consider that entertainment that we're looking on over there. Just 24 hours, 7 days a week, filling stuff in. What I really want to look at is we do these 7 days stuff all the time going back. So on Monday, we look back, there was 52 homes that came on the market Monday, 7 days back. Today, which are only 3 days away, that number's up to 68. And by the way, the pendings are about the same, 77, 73 days. So, to Scott's point, the interest rates are going up and down. So is houses coming on the market and going off the market. And then people are buying, people are selling. They're moving the needle forward. I'll just to put a reality to it, I'm been working on trying to get 3 contracts for 3 buyers between Richmond, Nelson County, and Waynesboro, and been losing every single one of them. Multiple offers.
Oh yeah, I had two somebodies lose in multiple offer situations over the weekend, making above list price offers.
So, and these are all different price ranges. The one on the other side of the mountain, because of the buyer's circumstances, we're at around $200,000, which is a hard thing to find. Nelson County, we're in the 3 to 4 range, and Richmond, we're in the 5 to 6 range. Every single one of those areas and price points, we've lost to multiple buyers. The 201 on the other side of the mountain, we lost to cash, which makes sense. That's investor primed rental kind of scenario. But both of them, the one in Richmond was 6 figures over. The one in Nelson County was multiple figures over, or double-digit figures. There you go, over. So you could be watching that, but that's not what's happening in the street, right? How's your applications going?
So we go through bursts, and the last 5 or 6 days have slowed down a little bit, but I don't know exactly what that's related to. If it's inventory, if it's rates, if it's rained for a few days and people got sad. I don't know.
So does pre.
Oh, I love Scott. I love Scott so much.
We're just going to walk around with a little bit of ray of sunshine.
I am a ray of sunshine. That's what I'm here for.
I love Scott.
Shine a ray of sunshine.
Elena Mangione watching the program, just an all-around A-plus person.
We enjoyed a cocktail and a drink with her last night. It was good to see her.
Your real estate colleague, Maggie Gunnell's watching.
Hey, Maggie, how are you?
She says this is why you play the long-term game here, especially in Central Virginia.
Yeah.
She knows, Scott knows.
The buyer pool is so deep. It really, I don't even want to say this out loud, but I will. Interest rates really don't matter. There's so many buyers that are in that pool that are looking to chase so few homes to buy that, interest rates is not an issue. It's how much am I going to pay? Maybe I'll bring more cash to the table to offset certain things. It's just that the buyer pool isn't being scared away. Maggie, she can time in, as she has more buyers now, I'm sure, than she's had before, and they're coming into the market on a daily basis. The question I was going to ask you, though, is there a differentiating, oh boy, is it different? I'll try a different word. Is it different, the application versus pre-approval, right? So I pick up the phone and send you.
Sure. So the number of qualified applicants. So typically, on average, what we see, given we've got a number of different lead resources and realtors and individuals and online advertising. So we're about 3 to 1. So that's 3 credit pulls to a pre-approved buyer, and then generally what we see, or what we're starting to see, is a longer transition from pre-approval to contract.
That's what I'm trying to get.
Given the amount of inventory that's there.
That's what I'm trying to get to.
So typically, when inventory is a little healthier, so you generate 2 pre-approvals, one of those 2 should close the following month. Right now, we're seeing a longer time from contact to contract. And that's really coming into play with what's available in inventory, what expectations are, what programs they might be interested in, if they're looking to do a 203K, if they're looking to do a renovation, an investor renovation, how long it's going to take them to find the property that's going to match their needs.
So I like that, contact to contract. So that's what I was trying to get at. So I send you a client, right, and fill out your application or fill out your online portal. Is that considered an application, or is that just a contact at that point? I get a pre-approval letter.
So, well,
I'm trying to.
There's so many different, so we consider an application started once there's a contract. I consider for the client an application started once they complete what they need for a credit.
So that's the point I'm trying to get to in a very feeble, fumbling way. So the data that we're looking at is really from contracts or from initial contacts?
Contracts.
Yeah.
When you're seeing what the media is publishing is actual contracts. When they talk applications,
They mean contracts.
They mean contracts.
Well, duh, there's less contracts going on now.
Absolutely.
So therefore, your application's on. I would be more interested in what's the volume of a Maggie Gunnels, Keith Smith, Jonas Smith, any real estate agent reaching out to you and saying, look, I need a pre-approval letter. That's something I'm more interested in, because that means we've got buyers out there actively looking.
We definitely have activity, and the number of applications or leads, as far as the way we track them at a team level. So now, and you'll talk to different people. A lead could be like, hey, I've got somebody for you, and they just give you a name. They'll count that in their process. We like to count actual credit applications as far as our leads go. That's then from lead to pre-approval to contract when we're tracking numbers.
So I'm trying to quickly just take a look at how many.
I love that. That was endearing. There you go. You had the branding upside down for those that are listening to the
Yeah, somebody
audio
should
vision.
pick the show up. I'm going to drink coffee.
Audio version only. No, it makes the show great. Jamie Turner is watching the
Here
program.
we go. How about this?
He is the mayor of Gordonsville who lives in Culpeper. He is suggesting a client to you in the comments section right now. Her name is Amy Cutright. He's tagged Amy Cutright in the comments section of my page, and Jamie Turner said, Amy, this is the mortgage person I recommend. He's on the show most Wednesdays and should be able to assist you. He's local to Culpeper.
I have actually talked to Amy in the last few days.
Okay, so we're matchmaking here. Jamie Turner, you're good people. Thank you for suggesting Scott. I responded that Scott Morris moves mountains, and for those that are watching the program, he should be a first call if you're looking for financing for a house.
And Amy's family, or her husband, they run a fantastic business called Greenswald, hardscaping and landscaping in the Culpeper, Central Virginia area. They do a fantastic job, and they some really, really impressive work.
Questions are coming in. You were asking questions of Maggie, who's responding to you now, Keith.
Thank you.
She says, yes, Keith, and triple exclamation points. So many buyers, not enough affordable housing,
So-
especially not enough inventory under 300K.
There you go. So my question for Maggie, as she's listening, is the tempo higher now than it was this time last year? In other words, are you seeing more buyers coming out in January, February this year than you did last year? I know we're starting to see it more. Our buyers' phone calls are picking up. Hey, I'm thinking about getting back into the market. I'm thinking about doing this. Where this time last year, they were so demoralized, right? Because, the rates were low. They were losing deals left and right on that end of it. We're starting to see that tempo pick up. And what I'm trying to do right here as I'm speaking live is taking a look at what in our region went pending in the last 3 days, and to take a look at what the average days on market, the medium days on market was. So in the last 3 days, since Monday to today, in our footprint, 29 homes. This is detached and attached, no new construction. I pulled that out. Have went pending in the last 3 days. Just think about that. Think about that absorption rate. In 3 days, 29 homes, attached or detached, went pending in 3 days. That is an indicator of the tempo and the speed of the market here, and we're not sure it's not.
How many total units on market in the area?
I mean, it's been pretty crystal clear throughout the last 6
I would
month
take a-
period with rates going to 7% levels that rates are not really influencing this market. And that's something that we've talked about on the show. Maybe for some investors, rates are influencing the market, or for the refinance business, it's influencing the market. But there's so many buyers here that Smith is basically saying that the inventory, if it's listed at a right price and it's in a good spot, it's going to move. Your
Sure.
6 things.
So to give you an idea of what the buyer perception is who's just walking in the door, let's say somebody downsizing, they're going to sell a property, they want to retain some funds, they're going to go get a mortgage. Their concept is, I had somebody, this dude's educated, makes good money, has for 30 years, and calls me this morning. Hey, what's going on? He's like, he goes, there must be some deals out there. You're seeing those prices come down since rates are so high. I said, buddy, I had 3 people lose in the last week who are making over offer, bids that are going in to try to buy a house. Like the inventory level does not support a lower prices. It just doesn't.
I 100% agree, and I'll throw it to you. Where the rates could be influencing this market is in the inventory pinch with those of us that secured rates 4% or under during the historically low interest rate period.
Yep.
That may demotivate us from listing homes.
Because you don't have to.
Because we don't have to.
If you have to, then you have to.
Exactly.
But all that does, and we've been talking about this quite a bit, all that is going to do is make this inventory even worse.
That's the problem. How do we... Go ahead.
At first. So, and the exact words I said to the friend of mine on the phone was, all right, so let's say
you
rates...
got a friend?
I've got one.
He's got a lot of friends. I'm his friend.
Let's say rates
Judas his friend.
overnight fell to 5%. What's the inventory problem that we have would be just absolutely that much more worse in the short term until people could then move the mental barrier to go ahead and list the price and go, all right, I'm at 3.5. I could go to 5 to cash in on all this equity and go get the next thing.
So the seller side, the list side, the number one conversation, any real estate agent that is watching or listening, contradict me or agree with me or add into your thoughts and comments on it. A lot of folks are like, well, I'm not going to put my house on the market because I got no place to go, right? Until they have to go someplace, right?
Absolutely.
But at the moment, motivation's a very motivating thing, right? If I'm motivated to buy and sell, and it's one of the things, like if we're representing Scott as a first-time homeowner, any buyer, and he's looking at Jerry's home and Judah's the listing agent, first thing I'm going to do is call up Judah and find out to the best of my ability what Jerry's motivation is.
Well, it comes back to death, divorce, family growth.
He's had enough of Smith and he's leaving the state, that kind of thing.
Never, Keith.
Yeah. I'm not sure about that.
Never.
Maybe that's Mrs. Smith saying that. I don't know.
We have the obvious ways of solving the inventory pinch. One of the obvious ways is government involvement. We have to be frank. That's not going to happen anytime soon.
Right.
We all realize changing, and I love what Keith champions, changing red tape into green tape will add inventory, but that's a long-term solution here. It's not going to happen short-term. Short-term, fellas, this inventory pinch is going to worsen. It's going to worsen, is it not?
I don't know how much worse it really is going to get. I think that I think it's going to be much like it has been until I see the data coming to support a lower rate environment. We got to get there. But
do you still believe we're going to get there?
Yeah. I 100% still believe that we're
by
going to get there.
the end of the year, we should be
I think that what we're seeing right now is a combination of a jobs report that was better than it truly was. We are still seeing some sticky inflation, but I think that we're going to see breaks in both that and jobs starting this month.
Yeah, but
I think it's going to worsen because the Fed is unable to take the proverbial foot off the accelerator. The data is still coming in hot, so he has to be hawkish with commentary, and as he's hawkish with commentary, rates will rise as a result, and that's going to keep inventory pinched.
We have to be careful about what rate we're talking about going up, right?
I understand there's not a direct correlation, but
they're
all correlated.
Everything is interconnected in this world, because if your credit card debt is obscene and you are now paying whatever on your credit card, that it impacts on his side of the equation on that end of it. So it is tied together, but there is technically not a direct correlation. It's more the T-bill that impacts that thing. But I'm just looking at what has sold in closed in the last 7 days. It was 74 units, and I track very closely, what the list price and the sales price is. And when they're awfully close, that means it's kind of balanced. So the average list price of the 74, by the way, was $553,000. The median, the average sales price was $551. So it's pretty damn close. When you start seeing those deltas widen, that's when you start seeing, okay, I'm listing at $1 and I'm selling at 50 cents. You start seeing the market changing a little bit. But the median days on market for those 74 units was 7 days. Now they're all over the place. It's Albemarle, Louisa, Fulvana, city of Charlottesville, but it's our 6 jurisdictions. So we're looking at just a 7-day snapshot, attached and detached, 7 days on market. Pretty much the same delta, list versus sell. It's just, this is a case where, one of my famous sayings, less is more. In this case, more is better, right? We need more units, and I do not see them coming down the pike anytime soon. We're going to have a great conversation on Friday with Greene County to talk about some projects, units there, which may be helpful, but it's Econ 101. There's just not enough product.
Friday, Greene County supervisors.
So it's a supervisor, Dale Herring and Jim Friedel, which is the planning director.
Okay, so Friday, mark your calendars. Neil Williamson's watching. That should be a good show. Yeah. Neil, good morning to you. Thank you kindly for watching the show, the president of the Free Enterprise Forum.
I think Jim's wearing several hats because of some staffing issues over there. But
well, did you hear what happened in Scottsville?
I did.
At the town council meeting. Town council meeting in Scottsville. Neil will appreciate this commentary. Kevin Yancey, I see your comment here. It's a good one, Mayor Waynesboro. At the most recent Scottsville Town Council meeting, the vote to take the tire plant, Dr. Hertz building, that is laden with asbestos and has been a forgotten property. There's a proposal on the table to convert it into apartments. And town council voted in a very, very narrow vote not to approve this development. And when that vote went no, one of the councilors that voted yes was so demoralized, he immediately quit council on the spot.
He resigned.
Literally resigned on the spot right after the vote.
So what's the pushback against the apartments?
The infrastructure conversation is happening where a lot of folks in Scottsville, which is a town of roughly 500 residents, they're saying that we don't have the infrastructure, roads, police, EMTs, rescue to manage this kind of added density. But here's an extra catch to this: is Scottsville is running at a budget deficit, and it's a pretty significant deficit because what allowed them. I'm very hesitant to say this because I think I know Scott's response to this. During the pandemic, they got relief money, and they spent that relief money, the town of Scottsville. And now that the relief money is gone, they have services that were financed during the pandemic that they're looking for money to keep.
Shocking.
They're looking to money to keep these services going. One of the ways they could have kept the budget solvent was this apartment complex, the development, because it would have, created incremental revenue.
Plus, there was some immediate cash coming in.
Yeah.
There was some immediate cash coming in, immediate infrastructure things they were going to do. Just to put a little caveat to it, so it got rejected. It got denied. They cannot bring that application back in its current form for another year. So that apartment, that whatever they were trying to get approved, that's done for a year. Now they can bring back something else. But more than
the Scottsville, and Scott, you jump in here, Keith, you jump in here. Scottsville is a unique animal because of its town status. The real estate taxes go to Albemarle County. They do not go to the town of Scottsville. Exactly. And it's not like they have a ton of restaurants in the town of Scottsville that are generating meals tax revenue. Yes. So they're really looking for revenue sources here.
So isn't that this kind of like this is what Scottsville has gone through for 50 years. None of this seems surprising to me, that the township itself has always been like an impoverished part of the area.
But I think if I'm reading Jerry's chemistry right, it's more than that. I can't give specifics, but I had a phone call from driving in from somebody that Jerry and I knows very well for a project in in Louisa, in Zion's Crossroads, that's coming up on Monday that they thought they had the approval for, and now they don't. And I was being asked some advice on how they should proceed or not proceed in it on that event. And I frankly couldn't offer them any great words of wisdom, to be frank. But the reality of it is, this is going to be like 500 units that just are not going to get built.
500 apartments?
No.
Or no, you're talking about Louisa.
He's talking
Louisa.
Zion's Crossroads
Yeah,
project.
Yeah. But my point is, this is a mindset that is growing out in some of the perimeter counties, right? So it seems like some of these counties caught some of the flu from Charlottesville and maybe the inner ring of Albemarle, where years ago, Louisa was very development friendly. It probably will fail.
Well, I mean, look at the political capital in various jurisdictions to more density in Central Virginia. Chris Fairchild, supervisor of Fluvanna County, has come on this program and said there's going to be no more new housing in Fluvanna. He said that.
There might be onesies and twosies, but other than that.
That's what he said. No more new housing. You got the town of Scottsville, who voted down an apartment complex that, let's cut to the chase, we need more housing, right? Town of Scottsville voted it down.
Yeah, but I don't disagree with that. If they already can't support their services that they have in place, and these aren't, and we're not even putting, if possibly if they were condos, to where you're putting hopefully a more affluent buyer, resident there, in place of however many units of apartments that you don't have parking to support, where the street parking is a nightmare. You go through all of the checklist of, they are short on police, they are short on EMT, all of these things. Like, how much benefit does the apartment building truly bring?
How does
is it more of a burden?
I empathize with the town of Scottsville and their infrastructure concerns. I do. I 100% understand that perspective. I guess the point I was trying to make is, you got multiple jurisdictions, townships, local governments, whatever you call it, that are currently kiboshing new housing and additional housing. So it's a political climate that may not want more housing. We may have to start.
Well, I think that's where we are. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Well, isn't that where growth extends into other areas? So this is where Goochland and Buckingham and these outlying counties should show some benefit, because with that, Fluvanna just spent however many millions of dollars building a new high school. They get more bodies, they're going to outgrow that, and they still won't have repaid the debt on what they just did.
$70 million, and they're, by the way, $20 million in debt for a water system that they don't have yet.
See, I mean, when you take these things into consideration,
So there's an honest belief out there that housing in these jurisdictions is a drain on everything. So do you believe that, or do you think housing actually is beneficial? Does that make sense, that question?
I think a large portion of Central Virginia, and I'm not going to characterize it by majority or minority.
Sure.
I'll just say a large portion of Central Virginia feels that way.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on
how are we going to change this inventory?
It depends on how much of that community spending is happening inside of that community, or is that spending in Fluvanna occurring in Charlottesville? So Charlottesville gobbles up the sales tax and tax revenue, while the county is drowning in bodies and services.
That's exactly right. So you want to try to keep them. You're 100% right. 80%, depending on who you talk to, of Lake Monticello travels out of Lake Monticello every day, right?
They'd rather shop at Wegmans than Food Lion. No, I get it.
Kevin Yancey says it was an $84 million high school.
84. Thank you,
yeah.
Kevin. Thank you for the phone call yesterday, Kevin. That was good
putting in the
information.
feed. Did you get my text messages?
Yeah.
This comment is coming in from Neil Williamson. The town of Scottsville's budget is about $600,000 to provide services to residents and visitors. As with most governments, personnel costs to provide quality services are the largest part of the budget. For transparency, the table below shows the tenure and the annual pay of the town's full-time and part-time staff.
So-
and I'll put this in perspective and throw it to you. Matt Lawless is the town manager.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
Our chemistry's working.
Matt Lawless is the town manager, great guy, recently got a raise, and I hope someone tags Matt Lawless on this feed here. He's a town manager of Scottsville. I believe his raise, if what I read is correct, or if my memory's serving me correct of what I read, he's making about $53,000 here.
It's not much north of it. Let me put this in
To
perspective.
be the town manager.
Let me put this in perspective. The 80% AMI for the land trust that we do is $57,000.
He would not qualify.
No,
he would qualify.
He would qualify. So
Yeah.
the town manager would qualify from an income perspective. Now, does he make enough income to get a loan or something like that? That's a different story. But as far as income limits go, now it depends on what his wife makes because it's a household kind of thing. But him alone so just think about that. The town manager.
The guy who runs the town.
Town manager.
I mean, you're talking about the number one guy here.
Yeah.
I mean, so that really puts it in perspective.
But you should, I know Neil does this, but it'd be very interesting to take a look about all the jurisdictions and what the folks make, right? And you think about what.
I mean, the city manager for Charlottesville City, you're talking about $250,000
But how much
total compensation.
But how much of a budget does he manage? Or
I
how
mean,
much
he's
of an
managing north of $200 million.
Yeah.
$600K roughly for Scottsville town manager.
Yeah. And I get that, but and I know Matt personally.
He's good at his job.
He's very good at his job.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. He's surely not getting paid enough.
Well, then, and then we go back to every teacher, police, and
Yeah, sure.
firefighter that all fill these same buckets, and we're saying that we already don't have enough money to support these services, and the infrastructure to support adding more bodies to the pool. I think that's where this becomes this conversation.
I can't believe I was just about ready to say this. Is this a chicken and egg thing?
It is a chicken and egg
right?
thing.
I knew every show we get chickens in.
I'm chicken plus right now.
You're chicken plus.
I've been
There you
hatching
go.
out a bunch of
You damn
chicks,
capitalist, you.
So.
So you're producing more chickens and eggs. But, so are you saying that we shouldn't do more development until the infrastructure is there, or do we? How, in your mind, how do you reconcile the chicken and the egg in this case?
So
I think they have
Fluvanna
to
should
happen
have been
harmoniously
Fluvanna
together.
should have been more
agree
pro-business
with that.
20 years ago, and they shouldn't have relied on utilities, public
yeah.
utilities, to
Yeah.
pay their taxes,
Yeah.
and they
Well-
would have been on the other side of the fence
Well,
with Louisa.
we missed the opportunity of having a second power plant, which was, if I believe the math right, is about $6 million a year in taxes, and that got shot down because it wasn't politically astute at the time to go ahead and do that. So we could have had another $6 million. So this Jerry's spot on. It has to be done concurrently. That's a big word. Huh? Very proud
Nicely
of-
done,
I'm
Keith.
proud of myself.
Nicely done.
I think I even said it right. It has to be done concurrently. But I know this much. Let's talk about our home county, right? Fluvanna County. If we don't either miraculously get high producing tax revenue businesses, which I don't frankly see us getting on it, their budget's going to land on my back, right? On your dad's back, right? And my mother and father's back. And that's why we're having, and Mom, I'm sorry I'm going to say this, but this is why we're having a conversation with Mom and Dad about, what are we going to do, right? So what happens, Coach? All I know is we're at 7%. We're selling houses like crazy, right? We've got buyers. I got nothing for them to sell. What's going to happen to the price of houses? What's going to happen to the price of chickens and eggs?
Exactly. Everything's going to continue to go up, but
It's going to be more affluent.
So, who is it? Who's saying no more houses in Fluvanna?
Supervisor Fairchild,
All right. So you got the no development. So even if that
pretty influential guy in Fluvanna.
even if that were to be broken in some way, you're still 4 years away from that being a thing.
Oh, without doubt.
And
Let's try 6, but
there,
yeah, without doubt.
So the overall inventory problem isn't shifting in the area from those. We can't build our way out of this.
Well, you
in the short term.
got it. Okay, thank you for quantifying that. But
Michael Payne said that. Michael Payne's running for re-election. Lloyd Snook's running
yeah, I
for
saw that.
re-election.
Yeah,
Lloyd Snook's running for re-election.
we're going to have some great shows coming up.
Undoubtedly. That's why I stand by the comment I made about this pinch with the inventory is going to be a persistent problem.
Yeah,
It's not rates. It's not the rates. We've seen with the data over the last 6 months.
We're looking
In a calendar year, or excuse me, in a 365-day period, rates have 2x basically, and the housing is still selling.
all you got to do is look at the reports.
Yeah.
On Real Talk with Keith Smith. I mean, it's
It's not the rates.
It's not the
So,
rates.
well, all right, to that point. So when you have rates that have 2x in a 12-month period, so anyone who it hinders the transition of people going and taking the next step because of where they are in that sub-4 environment. But I think if we can get to 5, we're going to go through a pain point of, everything takes longer. I like to say everything takes longer than we like to think it does. But let's say it was a 90-day period where, things were just really, really tight, but rates had fallen. But people start seeing the equity that they can have in moving, and then they go, okay, all right, well, I can make it make sense to do this. That's where you get on the other side of it. But we need a falling rate environment, and we need it to stick.
Okay.
We can't dip down for 30 days and then be back up into the 7s 30 days later.
So for the sake of a talk show, to steal my good friend's line there, we are now 30, 60, 90 days from now, rate's been sub-5. It's going to stay sub-5.
It'll worsen the predicament.
What does that do to this conversation we're just having? Inventory.
So that's what I'm saying. I think in the short term, it worsens the predicament as far as affordable housing goes, because you're going to see valuations continue to climb. But it'll give people the opportunity to go, okay, I can take this equity and only see this much difference in stepping up into the next thing.
Yeah, I give him that. I agree with that. But for the mental hurdle to be cleared, to your point, it has to be more than just the 2 or 3 weeks. Heck, I don't even think it was 2 or 3 weeks when they dropped below 6 this year.
It has.
How long was that?
It was
It was a
about
blip.
2
It was
2
in New
weeks.
York. It was a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
So to his point, it's got to be a long period of time for folks to make that mental leap to basically say, I'm 275 now. I'll go to 5 1/4, which that is really difficult for me to.
I'm about to say, I don't see you doing that.
275 to 5 1/4 would be really difficult for me to do.
Unless-
The only way I could do that is the fact that the property has gone up 30% since when I
Yeah,
bought
so
it
you
March
off
2020.
balance it with cash, and,
Yeah.
and your monthly payment.
That's the
maybe.
only way I could justify that.
Or you're told that's what you do.
I mean, no, this one, she trusts me on this one. This is the few
It
that,
was-
this is my call to make on this
It was
one.
a joke.
Everything else is her call to make.
Just a joke.
Hey, read Paul Jameson. Read Jameson Paul, welcome to the show. Where are you watching? Are you in South Carolina these days? Neil Williamson sharing good content. Kevin Yancey, the police are on payroll in the town of Scottsville. Police.
That's right.
They also
Yeah.
have Matt Lawless as the top paid employee. His salary is $59,000 now, according to Charlottesville Tomorrow.
And that's underpaid.
100% underpaid. Scottsville's now spending $133,000 more on payroll today than it was in 2019, according to the Charlottesville Tomorrow article that was recently published on this.
Yeah. So now we don't have a project that was going to bring in cash to make up that $200,000 shortfall, because that's, if you read the article,
Yeah.
that was the proposal anyway. So that's off the table. It's probably nothing is going to happen there. My suspicion would be, because I don't think it'll pencil out any other way because of the expenses of developing and doing it. So how is the town of Scottsville going to make up that $200,000? It's either going to cut services
Raise the meals tax.
or raise taxes.
I think it's going to be both. I mean, they're talking
Yeah.
about in the Charlottesville Tomorrow article canceling a sidewalk construction project
Yeah.
to save $10
Yeah.
grand, canceling a $6,000 public art grant to save $6K. They're talking about potentially raising taxes in the town, and those taxes are what specifically, Keith? You got meals tax there that goes to the town, because the real estate taxes go to Albemarle County.
They do. Yeah. I don't know enough about the tax structure in the town. The bottom line is whatever the pool they've got, it's going up. right? It's just that simple. It's going to go up. They got to make up that. They either got to make up that 200 grand somewhere, and you know, each jurisdiction possibly is going to run into the same issue, right? That's why the budget season is so important to watch, which we're in the middle of right now. Or they're just going to cut services. They're going to take police. I mean, 200 grand is a lot. I mean, how
Substantial. It's substantial.
How much is the salary total?
I'd have to.
I don't think it equals 200 grand.
Scottsville is spending 133,000 more on payroll than it was in 2019.
Got it.
I'd have to figure out the total number from this article. I'm reading it on the fly here. And this is resonating with the viewers and listeners. This is coming from someone who lives in the town of Scottsville. We cannot accommodate the kind of housing density that this project proposed. We don't have the infrastructure in place to do so. If they can solve the infrastructure problem, we're all for more housing because we know it's for the benefit of the businesses in the town. But until the infrastructure is there, we don't want this kind of project.
Yeah.
Literally in the feed.
Yeah. So it's back to my chicken and egg comment. How you going? Because who's going to pay for the infrastructure, right? And I think if I remember the application right, some of the infrastructure was being paid by the developer. I may be wrong. I read it very quickly the other day, but you know, who's going to pay for that? Where is that money going to come from, right?
How much sidewalk do you get for $10,000?
That's
a
a
lot.
great question. I wouldn't imagine it's a lot.
I can tell you not a lot.
Yeah.
When you look at the you know, the concrete cost, I mean, I know what.
Well, it's not the concrete cost. It's the right. It's the, I can get this out. It's the utilities you got to move to put it in. It's the infrastructure. It's not just pouring concrete.
So that sounds like that's making this even smaller.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
smaller
That if that includes hundreds of feet of sidewalk, I would be very surprised.
Yeah, I'm like
Yeah.
from me to the door. That's like 10 grand.
This is, and I mean,
Because
have you guys had
There's like poles they got to move.
your driveway sealed or repaved recently?
I just did it.
Have you? How much did you spend on that?
Too much.
Did you do it in conjunction with other neighbors
No.
for a price reduction? That's what we did. It's expensive.
Yeah.
I'm a redneck. I've got a gravel road.
That's nice. That's very nice. That's very nice. Ours, I was taken aback with how expensive that was. The Scottsville Loft proposal would have meant $75,000 in general contractor licenses,
Yeah.
plus a boost to the local economy in the form of material sales,
Yeah.
lunches from construction workers, and even construction jobs for locals.
So-
Echelon Resources would have given $100 grand
Yeah.
for the levies,
That's right.
and would have given $200K for the sidewalk construction improvements that local residents want.
It's
All
a-
that money is gone.
It's an old, Google it sometimes, it's an old white paper, but it was written in 2015, and it's called The Impact of New Construction on Local Governments. It was like Virginia Housing did it or something. So they call it direct and indirect expenses, right? So the direct expenses is during the construction, fuel, breakfast, lunch, that kind of thing. You know, restaurants will get a pickup a little bit. There'll be some dollars coming in. The indirect is the long-term taxes, because that apartment complex is going to pay a substantial amount of taxes.
No doubt.
Right.
I mean, how many of the
that
folks would have just walked over to James River Brewery and had a pint once it was finished? And Neil says it's B-poll taxes and meals tax that stays with the town. The B-poll and the meals tax. This question for you: why would Fluvanna stop someone not near the lake from building a subdivision?
Well, it depends on where it is. Say that again now.
Why would
not?
Fluvanna stop someone not near the lake from
Okay.
building a subdivision?
Got it. Well, it depends on where it's located, right? So if it's not in the growth area, in what they call the rural area, then you can't put, by rule, you can't put in a subdivision. You can do a rural subdivision, you know, like 5 lots, maybe even do what they call a rural cluster subdivision in there, which is a cluster. I've done one. It's a pain in the ass. Excuse me, it's a pain to go. Sorry about the little ears, to go ahead and do that. So you know, it's where the growth area is. There's growth areas. There's one around Lake Monticello and Zion's Crossroads. Lake Monticello, the reason folks wanted to do it was because the infrastructure was there, water, sewer, that kind of thing.
Crazy times, my friend. Woody Fincham, I promise I'll get to your
Hey,
comment.
Woody.
Fincham and
Hey, Woody.
Associates. He says leadership requires looking at now, but also planning for what is coming. Myopic politicians are not what we need right now. We need housing right now, Woody Fincham says.
So I just looked at Lake Monticello just to do a simple thing. The last 60 days, right? We've sold at Lake Monticello because I like using it. It's a simple metrics to do it. We've closed on 16 units in the last 60 days. These are closed and contracted. The median sales price, the average sales price was $350. That same 60 days at the end of 2022, in 2022, 34 was sold. So we're less than half, but the sales price was $335. So year over year, you went up over, somebody do some quick math, roughly $35,000, if I did my math right, on that in value. So
and we're down 50%,
and
44%.
you're down 50%. You're down almost a 1-to-1
How many
ratio.
active units are there right now?
I will find out for you, sir.
Let's welcome Erin Searcy to the program.
Hey, Aaron, how are you?
She's VP of Sales and Associate Broker at Storyhouse.
Yep.
Hey, Aaron.
Real estate. Love when you watch the program. Join us in the conversation if you want to shape the discussion, Aaron.
9.
9 active units, 4,000 rooftops. It's
I
tough, man.
I pull out. It's 4,300 rooftops. I pull out new construction out of it. So that's 9.
What's the average days on market?
Right, average is. It's hard to do on active at the moment. I use medium. It's 26.
Okay, that's
a lot. Actually.
that's a lot.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. So
That's
that
a lot.
I mean, that tells.
So I'm looking at
a little
them
bit
right
about
now.
those 9.
And without getting into specific details on them, because I'll get myself into trouble.
Yeah.
There's one that's over 200 days, which obviously there's an
It
issue.
either has some major problems
Yeah,
or
yeah,
it's
yeah.
majorly overpriced.
There's one that's 138 days over market, one 96 days over market, one 42 days over market. But when you start looking at the ones that just came on, they're in the single digits.
Yeah, so those are so that's basically what's.
They're either the ones that are high end, they're either overpriced,
or they've got something.
wrong features or conditions or something. Like
So he gets this question all the time. Grayson, we appreciate you watching the program, North Downtown's Finest. Wants to know when rates are going to drop again.
I think we see some. We're going to see some inflation data and some jobs reports come out between the 7th and the 10th. I was hoping that we got some a little reprieve, or we see maybe some like a technical ceiling kind of hold things. If the U.S. 10-year can stay below 4%. We can get into next week where we should get some good inflation data and some bad jobs reports. Good for the bond market, bad for the overall economy, but that should pull rates back down a little bit. That's what's keeping us flirting with the highs that we're seeing right now.
It is only going to make it effing worse. I'm telling you, if rates go down...
No. I'm not talking about... We're not seeing that kind of improvement.
I'm literally looking at these 9
seeing
homes.
just staying off these highs.
I'm looking at these 9 homes, and it's really 5. I'm looking at them as you were speaking. There's really only 5 homes on the market, Lake Monticello, because the ones that are up there, they're
Long
really
in
not,
the tooth.
They're really not on the market.
Yeah.
And I may have just got myself in a bunch of trouble there, but they're really not. So there's really only 5 homes that are really on the market, and if you really want to buy something, there's nothing available. Okay, there's 1 or 2 that are below $300,000 on that end of it, and those are not so much the long in the tooth end of it, but they're kind of growing there a little bit on it. But the ones that's in 1-day market, 0-day market, they're over $300,000.
Yeah.
On that end of it, I just think higher interest rates are going to be more buyers getting into the market. We're seeing it right now. It's picking up. The tempo is picking up. Inventory isn't picking up because people aren't moving. We all kind of agree if it's 4 years, 5 years, 2 years, we just don't see new product coming out of the ground in enough volume to make a difference and impact. And why I said earlier, it's all about micro markets matter. They do. And location matters.
John Blair watching the program. JB, we'll get to these comments here on LinkedIn. He says the The idea of infrastructure in place to serve residential development is simply a bad governance.
Yeah.
That will never occur.
Yeah.
A local government may have infrastructure in place, development parks for new industrial office development, but
Yeah.
no local government is ever going to build roads and lay sewer water before residential development comes. He also says this, think about it this way, would any taxpayer support capital expenditures and additional operational expenditures before development? That is never going to happen from a political perspective. It's good comments right there.
He's spot
But is
on.
that even what we're really getting into? Aren't we talking like
I think
the-
that's exactly what we're talking
But
about.
on a basic service level, with existing bodies to support critical fire, police, those items, those are what they're already short on. So let's say we can build a big enough parking lot to support the apartment building,
Well,
they're not gonna-
it's two sides to that coin, though, Scott, because let's assume they even had the capital.
And you're talking, John he's the city attorney
Yeah.
for town of Stanton, and he's now acting city manager in the town of Stanton. He was the city manager of Charlottesville.
Yeah, he
and
knows.
the city attorney of Charlottesville.
This is
I
firsthand.
mean, we're talking about
But on
Heavy hitter.
My train of thought on that was, look, let's say we've got the capital to do this. You can't hire anybody anyway, right? I mean,
then we get back into the labor.
we get back to the labor problem, or they don't want to go, right? They don't want to come to work in a jurisdiction or whatever. This is just like I was joking around about our chickens, but it truly is a chicken and an egg thing.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Jerry's spot on though. This is not an us and them thing. It's a we thing. We together have to attack this. It's part of why I put so much time in the Regional Housing Partnership on that, because we focus on these 4 pillars for this topic that I think is important. But it's a we. It's not an us. It's not a them. The jurisdictions can't do it on their
the
own.
one thing that it's causing universally to suffer is what we all consider affordable, like where that price point is getting more and more difficult, and not just here in Northern Virginia, Richmond,
It's
even
nationwide, brother.
yeah, wherever you go, that is the biggest obstacle that all of these other problems are making that problem worse.
So how do we fix it? Right? I mean, we talk about this all the time.
I'd get a podium and I'd have people vote for me if I knew how to.
I think you are doing some good efforts with the land trust. I think that's a great concept.
Well, my hats off to Kevin. He gave me a great idea about that for the other side of the hill, which I'm gonna work on a little bit and get a little help on his end. But that's just to steal it from Robert Liberty. That's just a couple of pellets of the silver buckshot. There's no silver bullet to this.
Right. Well,
Right?
sure.
If Robert Liberty knew how
He knows.
much his phrase
He knows.
he
He
does,
knows. He
it's
does.
used so much in Central Virginia. I love it.
I get invoiced.
I love, yeah.
get
You got to pay royalties on that.
I get invoiced.
pay royalties.
I get invoiced.
Kevin wants to know that, and I've tried to respond in the comments here. A perfect site for new construction by the reservoir, 5 to 8 miles from Zion's Crossroads. And I explained to him that there's no political capital for new construction in Fluvanna County. So he's kind of looking for venues for new construction. I just don't think you have the political
A
capital.
reservoir in Fluvanna.
He's saying Fluvanna has a perfect site to construct a reservoir. Within 5 to 8 miles of Zion's Crossroads. I guess he's talking about the water.
Yeah, that
Then
ship.
he's also saying Louisa and Goochland are approving anything near Zion's Crossroads. Although there's a little bit of friction now.
No,
Yeah,
I think
there's friction now.
I may be wrong. Monday will be the telltale to that, but my tea leaves are telling me it's going to be a close vote. Either way, to get it approved, and this is a substantial amount of rooftops in it. To the infrastructure thing. A shout out to Louisa though, right? 30 years ago, or how many years ago, Louisa did make an investment in bringing water infrastructure to Zion's Crossroads long before anything was there. I can speak to this
Before
first.
they ever started courting Walmart, before all of it.
Yeah, I can speak with some authority on this because I was part of the discussions way back when. There actually was, and our friends in Fluvanna kind of whiffed.
relied on utilities as being
No,
their
no, no,
primary
sir.
form
What
of
I was going to
action.
say is they struck out at the plate because they had an opportunity to co-op with Louisa back in those days, and they said no, for whatever reason. And now we're playing catch-up ball as far as Flavanna is concerned to bring water there. But we're not going to get any substantial water to Zion's Crossroads probably for another 24, 36 months. The point is also we don't have enough dirt to develop on the Flavanna side. If you look at the growth area, it's tiny compared to the Louisa County side. It's half of Zion's Crossroads, the intersection, is in Louisa County. Excuse me. So anyway, did we solve anything?
That's why you're thinking it's the Greene County market.
I do. I think it's going to be the Greene County market. I really believe it's the other side of the hill. It's going to be where this type of growth is going to be welcomed, right? I think on the Greene County side, we'll find more about this on Friday. I think it's the ones that are in the pipeline that's going to get produced. I think right now, new big projects might hit the same brick wall as some of the other rural jurisdictions.
That's what I think.
Yeah, but they have a certain amount of lots that are already either been approved or in the pipeline of being approved that, and Neil will correct me, but no other jurisdiction that I'm aware of has that volume of potential lots in the pipeline.
This is from John. Please tell Scott and Keith that you three are providing a masterclass in real estate development today. This is your best show in months. This is from John Blair.
Thank you, John.
That's big time right there.
Thank you.
JB, we love when you watch the content and
That means
offer and
something.
share your perspective.
That means something.
So look, you got Payne and Snook announcing a run for re-election. You got 3 spots on the Board of Supervisors,
Albemarle County.
Albemarle County. You got Greene County, 1 supervisor coming in Friday.
Yep.
To give you some clarity. You're going to start doing these coffee with the candidates, which I think is a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Show me the path to meritable and tangible change.
What moves the needle?
Show me the path.
What is it?
Yeah, and that's the question I asked is, how are we going to fix this, right? Look, the only way I know how to do something, because I'm surely not smart enough to come up with some genius plan. The only way I know how to do this is to talk about it and to get the decision makers or get the stakeholders, is the term du jour, on it at the table. That's the reason why on March 24th we're doing this summit with the Regional Housing Partnership, which again is built. We have all the elected bodies there. We have all the nonprofits in the housing space. We have most of the for-profits in the housing space in this group, and we have the people who we serve. Not one of those pillars can do this on its own.
So people don't like change, people don't like increase of cost, and people don't like things in their backyard.
Yeah.
So what is it that overall, because we're getting, the university's expanding, the alphabets are expanding, NGICs, DIAs, those, we're getting more bodies. So how do we support more bodies and do something to alleviate the cost if we can't build, if every jurisdiction's policy is we don't want to grow?
It's got to be economic development. If it's not economic development, then all you're going to do is raise taxable burdens on real estate, real estate, and gentrify the community.
We'll let John Blair answer this question if he can. I know of the conversations I'm having with businesses that want to come in the area. They won't do it, A, because there's not enough bodies to hire, and because there's not enough rooftops, there's not enough people here, and what they're going to be.
What kind of business are those?
These are manufacturing businesses. These are, $20 an hour kind of jobs, that kind of thing. Now, the Charlottesville businesses are growing, or the high-tech ones, the 6-figure ones. But these are, the manufacturing, the Walmarts, supercenters of the world, right? They're not coming into our area because there's just not enough bodies to hire. So again, it's this chicken and egg kind of thing going on.
I think we're getting an Amazon data center in Culpeper.
You are.
How confirmed is that?
Confirm.
Confirm? Wow, that's big time.
Right, and so what's going to happen is all the people that are losing their jobs out west, they're going to migrate this way. right? Because they need somebody to work there, right? They're not autonomous. Look at that, that's another big word.
Autonomous.
Did I hurt myself?
Yeah,
I think I hurt
good
myself on that
I
one.
think you did a great job right there.
Autonomous, right? They don't run by themselves. They require people, correct? To a certain degree.
Yes.
Right. So they're going to hire people. Where are those people going to come from to go ahead and do that? I might get myself into a little trouble here, and Jerry loves it when I do this.
I love when you do that.
Mrs. Smith does not.
I love it.
I think the biggest conflict that we've got going on here is going to be a generational conflict. It's going to be between. So let's just look at who's opposing projects. What do they look like?
They are generally older in demographic, white, have mustaches and tassels on their loafers. That was the thing at Keith Smith over there. Yes, they're generally.
Yeah.
I
Not even
remember when
loafers.
Scott made that joke. I thought it was hilarious because I could truly see you at one time wearing loafers with tassels.
Who says I don't?
Well,
I just don't bring them on here because you bust my chops so much.
Neil says the Amazon data center is not a high number of employees for Culpeper. And he shares the Charlie Armstrong link from the Free Enterprise Forum that talks about the Greene County Board of Supervisor interaction.
Yeah.
Reed
So that
Jamison
was
Paul
for a
says
55 and over
says
project.
old white liberals oppose housing. That's what he writes from South Carolina. It's
actually-
actually both sides of the aisle. It's both sides of the aisle that's doing this. It's one of the few unifying topics.
It's the
NIMBYism.
NIMBYs. Yeah.
NIMBYism is
So
one of the few
that's what I was
unifying-
trying to get to. NIMBYism usually
Topics.
usually like me. There was just an article which I was not planning to talk about it here. Actually, Vaughn's Googling me right now. Insider Magazine, Business Insider. Self-centered boomers destroyed the economy, and now millennials and Gen Zs are paying the price. So the article basically talks about that the younger folks are build, baby, build kind of thing. Where am I going to live? The older boomers, which would be me.
But you're not. You don't embody that.
No, but it's
I hear you're in the game of selling real
I am in the
estate.
yeah. In case anybody's wondering,
You're a realtor.
I am a realtor.
You're a realtor.
Actually, I do
You
a
work.
job.
He works.
I work.
He actually, well, he had some good news today. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
I left it at that.
yeah. You can't. We can't talk about that.
Left
right
it at
now.
that.
Thanks for putting me in the box there. Appreciate it, brother. So we're in circles, right? You know, we can give these. And John, thank you so much. I've always wanted to do a master class on this topic.
Oh, he would
on
be
the
so
show.
great.
But at the end of the day, it requires these, in my opinion, it requires these four pillars. The government can't do it on its own. The private sector can't do it on its own. The nonprofits definitely can't do it on their own. So everybody has to be together at one table to say, okay, well, we're going to do it. And that's how we got these 23 units built with the land trust.
So here's my question about the 23 units. So how does that continue to remain affordable
Ooh, great
with
question.
the shortage of inventory to the point where someone who fits the 80% AMI bucket can no longer afford to qualify what the market kind of drives the cost?
Try
Is
that
it-
question a little bit
All right,
differently.
so
I had you halfway through
one
with
of
the
these
second.
one of these units comes available, and in order for someone to purchase that, they must fall into the 80% AMI, be qualified. What controls the cost of that when it comes back on market?
Oh, you can answer that one
I can. I'm going to try to do it and
layman's perspective.
do it without geeking out.
Explain it so I can
I
understand.
mean, marine proof?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that
yeah.
what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
There you
a good
go. Now
question.
you
I
understand
got
it? So I'll do it by an example. Our land trust, the first units we built was on Nassau Street. We built 4 of them. We received $260,000 from Charlottesville. Plus they helped us with a bunch of red tape, turning it into green tape. We expedited some things. So we turned around, we acquired land, we did the horizontal development, and we did the vertical development, sold them for $215,000. So the way the land trust works, it retains ownership of the land, right? So there is a 99-year lease on that land. The buyer buys the improvements on top of it, right? Mm-hmm. So now when that process happens, the land trust does a fair market appraisal. Matter of fact, Woody does the fair market appraisal. So those units, I think it was 2.5, 3 years ago, when they were sold, They sold for $215,000. Done. They're in the house. 80% AMI, yada, yada, yada. They're in the house generally for like no cash down because we pay closing costs and all this great stuff. 2 years later, I get a phone call. I'm ready to move up the housing ladder. I've got a new job. I'm ready to move up. I want to quantify back. As long as that buyer's in that house and their salary goes up, they're in the house. They're good, right? They're in it, right? Maybe that was part of the question you were trying to ask.
They want to sell the house.
I got
what
it.
controls the value of the house?
I'm trying to get there. So now 2 years from now, they're ready to sell. We do another appraisal. In this case, it jumped up to 400 grand. Right, so they went from 300 grand to 400 grand in 2 years.
I thought they bought it at 215.
They bought it at 215. The market value was 300.
Okay.
So the market value then 2 years from
All right. Now the market value is 400.
400 grand.
What's the?
Well, let me get it. So they get to use 25% of that appreciation, that 100 grand. They add it to their 215 initial purchase price. So the maximum sales price is 240. Right? And the buyer has to make 80% AMI and below. So that does that. And oh, by the way, in both those cases, they walked away with over $50,000 cash, moved up the ladder.
So it was win-win-win.
It was a win-win-win. And then but you know what's even better for the jurisdiction? The city gave us $60,000 for each lot. That $60,000 will continue to give forever. So I'm not going back to them and saying, I need another $60,000 for the buyer who's buying that. So it's a one and done, much like my martinis at Tavola, one and done. And it's true, I walk in and the bartender goes, one and done? Yeah, one and done. And so I hope that wasn't too complicated.
No, I get it. So, all right, so.
What happens after the 99 years?
It renews automatically.
There you go.
So, conceivably, right now, originally appraised at 300, purchased at 215. Now we could be at 450.
They get to keep 25% of the delta.
And 265.
265 can't sell to anybody that makes more than 80. Oh, by the way, our average AMI is 65.
But that gives you an idea. So to the point.
It's one solution. It's not the solution.
It's not even a solution. How many? We're talking 15 units total.
No, I've done more than that.
I know. I understand that. But what I'm saying is, for everybody else, we went from 215 valued at 300. Forget it. We went from 300 to 450. Where does that place every other buyer who's
That's
out
exactly
there?
right.
That's the problem.
That's the problem.
That's why he says it's a silver buckshot.
It's
not the solution.
It's two pellets within a buckshot. It's not the. You have to bring along everybody else of those pillars in order to get closer to a silver bullet.
I mean, we had probably.
How do I get like a tiny house development like approved somewhere?
But where would it go?
But you can't. That's the problem.
And also, the tiny houses are often priced per square more expensive than the single-family detached.
And why is that?
You want to tell?
No, you sir.
You're the contractor. You're the class A.
We've been doing this together.
John's got an answer for you, though,
Yeah, go
on
ahead,
your
John.
question.
Go ahead.
He says, to answer Keith's question, I think you need a pro-growth agenda in the area.
Yeah.
You need the Albemarle County Economic Development Department to acquire land for manufacturing developments.
Yeah.
But you also need for the county, which is the biggest player in the area, to upzone like crazy for residential development. Increase the development area from 5% to 6% of the county's land mass.
Yeah. And
Answering your question specifically.
Yeah, and thank you, John. So I'm actually more in favor of a land bank so that the jurisdictions, and that's something I've been pushing, that the jurisdictions, if they had brownfields or parking lots or some amount of land that they weren't using, they put it into a land bank, and the land bank then reaches out to different developers. Very similar to what UVA is doing, that I'm part of the community engagement team.
Yeah.
We send out RFPs and so forth and so on in it. That methodology works. But look, I was having a conversation with Kevin about this yesterday as I was driving to Fredericksburg for a meeting. Another path is, tax delinquent properties. We just don't have any here.
Yeah. This is in Richmond.
Richmond's got
this is in
1,000.
Richmond.
There's some on the other side of the hill, and that was the conversation.
What, in Waynesboro area?
So, but then, typically, who goes in and gobbles up tax delinquent properties? Investors?
Yeah,
Investors.
wealthy folks. that have cash on hand.
Yeah, so, if the jurisdiction, and I don't know how this works because I'm sure there's some state laws that mandate this, which I'm an expert at this at all, but if the land trust could get a shot at it first, legally, that would be a good thing.
That's not a bad idea.
That wouldn't be
It's a
a
great
bad
idea. I just don't, I think it
Unless
has to go to the steps.
Unless that I had the money to not only dislike that idea, but then beat you over the head in court about how wrong I think it is.
Yeah.
It could happen.
So I think, and Neil would know this, I think for sure. I think it's like a foreclosure,
Yeah.
right? It has to go to the court steps in order for it to get in. I don't think they can unilaterally just take it, but I may be wrong.
I want to emphasize
I
this.
may be wrong.
They
Please
can't
don't-
until
please
until
don't-
you get enough people to vote on it, and then if that's
Please don't.
the argument.
Please
We've
don't.
had in the 23 years that I've been in the Charlottesville area, I've been here 23 years in August, we've had arguably the most pro-housing counselor in Michael Payne on there. I think Dave Norris is probably in that category too. Michael Payne, you can make an argument the most pro-housing counselor in the last 2 decades.
I actually think the timing, if that's what you're thinking. Go ahead, I'll let you finish. I apologize.
Here's my point. A very pro-housing council. Lloyd Snook says in his re-election announcement that affordable housing is a priority for him.
Yeah.
Most pro-housing counselor in the last 23 years, and nothing has materialized.
Well,
Nothing is materialized.
Well, here's a prime example. The conversation is going in the right direction, but it's just a conversation. Excuse me. It's just a conversation.
Go ahead.
But without those other pillars, the government just can't do this on its own. It could help. It could facilitate. It could potentially fund. It could turn red tape into green tape, but it really can't do this. It takes a willing seller, to quote Neil Williamson. Somebody's got to be willing to sell this land to go ahead and do it. But, it's...
they got to be willing to sell the land. You got the land, the surrounding landowners not to fight it tooth and nail at every meeting for approval. I mean, that's what turns this should be 1 year, 2 year process into a 6-year.
10 years ago, I made a proposal to Fluvanna County, and it got shot down. And my proposal to Fluvanna County, it's pretty outside of the box, was to do what's called a subdivision overlay. The county itself takes on the role of being the rezoner, and they rezone it, and it sits over the top of an A1 property. And if Keith, Jerry, and Scott come in there and we meet all the criteria and check all the boxes, then it automatically drops down on top of the land, and then we get to move forward. Politically, that's just suicide, because now a board now is making political decisions for some future board, which is kind of a squirrely thing that one can or cannot do. But it was a solution at one time. Some jurisdictions have done that, mostly out west. They go ahead and they do it. Okay, this is it. And if we come in and check all the boxes, it drops back down, and all of a sudden now we're there. But that requires Fluvanna County to say, I want this in Zion's Crossroads. And they won't do that.
The quickest path to solving this conundrum may be Payne's idea for the payment in lieu of the pilot program with UVA. Now, will UVA ever do that? I don't know.
Yeah, rephrase that again.
I mean, where Payne is talking about how UVA owns so much real estate, and what percentage of that real estate is being paid, or taxes being paid on.
Yeah,
I mean, he's talking about tens of millions of dollars if we can figure this out here. I'm not sure UVA will ever go for that.
Well, some of that has changed because they moved some of the ones that they're talking about from the university to the foundation. The foundation is taxable.
Yeah.
So the one on West Main Street is now owned by the foundation. The one on Fontaine is now owned by the foundation.
It's still a sizable portion.
Correct.
That's owned by the university, which is not exposed to real estate taxes.
That's exactly right. And I think his argument is that I would think UVA would see it differently.
Of course.
Shockingly.
Of course.
Shocked.
Gentlemen, today's show was excellent. Government officials giving us props on the show. We appreciate that. Keith Smith, Friday, what do you got?
Yeah, so Friday we've got Greene County at the table. We're going to have the chairman of the Board of Supervisors and the planning director, and I think he's wearing several other hats because of some staff shortages over there. We're probably what we've just been talking about. It sounds like we're going to pick that topic back up and see from a rural jurisdictions perspective how they see it. From a budgeting perspective and housing, no housing. What do they see coming down the pike?
Hell of a job today, boys. Great work.
A lot of fun.
Scott Morse, Ross Mortgage, great guy.
Thank you. We need the volatility to come to an end. We need some sort of I'm up, they see me, I'm down, to slow down to where we can get into, I think the longer we get into a more stable environment as far as mortgage rates go, the more likely we are to see people being willing to make that jump from a lower rate to a higher rate and take advantage of the equity that they have. In the meantime, let's talk about using tools like a 2-1 buy down, using the trusted professionals you have in your network to make good decisions to get you where you want to be.
Well said, Scott Morse. Judah Wickhauer, props to you. Keith Smith as well. I Love CVille show up in 55 minutes. The show archived at realtalkwithkeithsmith.com, and make sure you click that sizzle reel menu bar tab.
That's right, new tab. Thank you very much.
Very, very good.
Yeah, love it.
Very, very good. Realtalkwithkeithsmith.com. All right, guys, take care. Well done. Very well done. That was fantastic.